Please do a visualization with me. Picture yourself in middle school science class. Picture your teacher, picture your classroom, even picture your favorite middle school outfit. And now think about the social awkwardness you probably feel. You're not sure you fit in. At the same time, you have no idea how you're going to grasp the meaning of all these science concepts that your teacher is throwing at you. What's the difference between evaporation and condensation anyway? How does transpiration and precipitation work in the water cycle? Wait, is precipitation what happens when I'm nervous on stage? Sit with that feeling a moment. Remember what it feels like to be stuck in confusion in your gut and your limbs. Just now, your teacher surprises you. You're going to do theater with your whole body to learn science. At first, you feel resistant, unsure, your body closes in, but you don't have time to hesitate. Your teacher gives you just a couple minutes to discuss the meaning of evaporation, and then it's go time. Your group is going to come up with gestural and metaphorical scenes to represent the idea of water turning from liquid into gas. And in the thick of creative energy, your group performs a beautiful physical enactment of this idea, and you observe the work of others. You've just shared meaning-making transactions in a metaphor marketplace, and you'll not soon forget the idea of evaporation. My own understanding and grasp of the power of gesture was catapulted through my training in capoeira, an Afro-Brazilian martial art dance form. In college, I immersed myself in capoeira under the guidance of Mestre Efraim Pereira de Silva. Now, in capoeira, you have to learn to practice singing in Portuguese and clapping at the same time. A maré tá cheia, yo yo. A maré tá cheia, ya ya. Well, capoeira taught me more than just how to sing beautiful songs about the sea in Portuguese. It also taught my body a whole new gestural and movement vocabulary. As Mr. Cordion, a veteran capoeirista, describes, each movement is a word, and the limitless combinations of movements are like sentences that you compose with someone else. So one capoeirista may pose a question with a kick, and the other can choose to respond with an escape, a fake, or a counterattack, and maybe a complex sentence of all three. When capoeira is at its best, two capoeiristas play with graceful synchronicity, opening up space for the other one to fill, and spicing things up with the element of surprise. Many movements have a metaphorical name attached to them, and it helped me certainly understand the meaning behind the movement. So here are two examples. The cocorinho, like a coconut falling from a tree. The bananeira, a banana tree, tempting you to knock it down. See, to me, capoeira provides this really accessible way to see how gesture is this powerful metaphorical tool for sense-making. And to see how, let's just break down the cocorinho. So when I think of a coconut falling from a tree, I imagine it bounces off the ground and then comes to a rest. And in capoeira, when I see a kick flying, I go into the cocorinho, I drop my body low, and I bounce right back up. So when we embody the coconut in this kind of movement, it's a type of gestural metaphor, one we use often to express ourselves whether we know it or not. Let's return back to middle school and think and play with gesture ourselves. So if I was your teacher preparing you to get ready to use your body in theater for science, I might start with this warm-up. If your emotional state right now is the weather, how would you describe your forecast with a word? Sunny, overcast? Okay, now how would you show me that forecast in a gesture? Don't think too hard. I'll show you one. Foggy skies clearing to the sun. Okay, to make space for shared vulnerability through creative expression, wherever you are, at home, in the audience, show me your gesture for your internal forecast. A count of three. 1, 2, 3. Bravo. See, in education, the problem of disengagement of students has been around a long time. Many students vote with their feet and they leave. And teachers are doing the same thing. In a recent pre-pandemic poll, more than 50% of teachers responded that they were thinking about leaving the profession or actively looking for another job. You can imagine it's only gotten worse. I'm going to propose a simple solution. To re-engage students and teachers and rekindle joy, let's use a resource that is free and readily available in every classroom around the world. A resource that engages our creativity and instills a sense of belonging. That resource, the human body, the feet, the legs, the hands, the arms, the torso, the facial expressions, and the creative potential waiting latent inside all of us. Nationally, we compete for the highest test scores in math, reading, science, but our scores have remained basically the same. All the while, as kids get older, their engagement decreases and their creative thinking takes a hit too. And I believe that there's a link. In science, for instance, many students lose interest in science in part because they struggle to grasp and distinguish all the concepts that they learn. And how can they engage creatively and make meaning of what they're learning if they're overwhelmed by confusion? Passively sitting, listening to a lecture, completing worksheets, it doesn't really provide space for the sense-making and the use of the body and the creative expression that is so vital to learning. We learn with our whole body, not just our brains, not just our hands. I think that students feel locked out from fully engaging their creativity in school, and I'm going to propose that creative gesture and metaphor are two keys to unlock and release that creative potential. So why am I so into metaphor, you might ask? And what is metaphor anyway? Well, metaphor at its essence is one thing represented by another. We use metaphor all the time. Whether we know it or not, some research suggests that up to 4 times a minute in regular everyday speech, we're using a metaphor. And we use metaphor to simplify otherwise incomprehensibly large and abstract ideas, to better express and explain how we perceive the world we live in. We make metaphor also to communicate beauty. And some larger conceptual metaphors have a powerful influence over us. For instance, we use the metaphor of warfare to think and talk about argument. Our points are on target. Positions are indefensible. Ideas get shot down. And as George Lakoff and Mark Johnson wondered in their book, The Metaphors We Live By, how might we approach argument differently if we use the metaphor of dance? What if we danced in argument, like playing in capoeira? So for 100 days, I tried to tune my metaphor radar. I looked for as many metaphors as I could find, and I jotted one down each day. And I tried to pay attention to metaphors outside of language. What was revealed to me is a meaning-making metaphor marketplace. We live in a meaning-making metaphor marketplace. It's all around us. It's not just me. We're all metaphor nerds. I've noticed one metaphor that I want to share. When NFL players came onto the field with their hands raised high but in the air, everyone in the audience knew exactly what that gesture in protest meant. I remain transfixed about this power of gesture and metaphor. Why are they such quintessential tools for sense-making and creative expression and sharing meaning? And how can we use creative gesture and metaphor to enhance engagement in learning? Well, my curiosity about this really started about 5 years ago when my colleague Nate Beard and I met with 2 science teachers in middle school. They both expressed remorse and discouragement about sending kids from one grade level to the next without really learning enduring skills of how to present what they know and how they think. The PowerPoint presentations just weren't cutting it. So we thought, well, what's a creative alternative? Bring theater into science. So to begin, students just played theater games. They learned the art of gestural metaphor, had fun. They became more comfortable, more confident. And pretty soon, with a science concept in hand, they constructed frozen scenes to represent these ideas. They employed a long-standing theater technique called tableau vivant, where actors transition between frozen scenes on stage to tell a story. And by not using language at all, the actors in the audience would focus their attention on the aesthetics of their bodies and gesture. The proximity of bodies on stage, the overall composition, implied motion, facial expressions, all textures of meaning. So to represent the idea of water changing from a solid state to a liquid state, a group of students formed a stack of ice cubes with their bodies in the middle of the classroom. And soon they became a puddle on the floor. And it was more than just scientific understanding on display. This was creative and aesthetic development, and it was joy. So what's happening here with gesture and meaning? Our bodies are packed full of metaphorical possibility. People of all ages and all cultures spontaneously gesture while speaking, just like I'm doing today. And as an audience, we appreciate it. In Vanessa Van Edwards' TEDx London talk, we learned that the most popular TED presenters use nearly twice as many hand gestures while speaking as the least popular presenters. And I know I'm shooting for 465. We use gesture to convey, receive, and embody meaning. When students embody a non-human entity, such as a water molecule, they're enhancing their spatial awareness of these abstract ideas. And more so, they're helping their brains map and visualize from past knowledge to current understanding and then to future recall. And you know in a classroom with their peers, when they enact with their bodies these ideas, it's enhancing their emotional experience in learning. And neuroscience, with researchers such as Dr. Mary Helen Imordino-Yang, they have shown us that this emotional engagement is absolutely crucial and essential to learning. Research across 4 decades shows us that gesture can help students learn. Dr. Robert Alvin Metcalf in the 1980s found that 10 or 11-year-olds who used their bodies and physical enactment to learn about molecular change were able to explain and interpret these concepts at twice the rate of their peers later on. More recently, Dr. Mariel Hardiman found that middle school students who were at a basic reading level and used creative gesture and other artistic modalities to learn about science were able to retain that understanding at 3 times the rate of their peers. Dr. Susan Cook in the mid-2000s found that if you asked younger students to use gesture while learning math, such as pointing to 2 sides of an equation, they retain that learning at twice the rate of their peers who are asked only to speak. Simply put, if we restrict students' bodies and their creative gesture in learning, we're inhibiting their ability to learn. And it makes sense if you think about it. So let's take 2 easily confused ideas from astronomy: revolution and rotation. Now, I can say the words out loud, and I can write them down, and I'm probably going to forget it before lunch. But if I think about the difference with my body, the distinction becomes clear, and it sticks. Unfortunately, the use of creative gesture in learning is actually quite rare still in educational practice. In fact, many learning environments require students to disconnect their bodies from their thinking. Students at a young age are asked to sit for most of the school day, and we as adults may even mistake students' embodied learning processes as disruptive or disrespectful. And when we shut it down, some of our most marginalized learners are pushed away and shut out from some of their most essential culturally rooted learning tools: gesture, movement, rhythm. And you know what? Teachers need this creative engagement too. We have found that it can enhance teachers' joy and reduce their stress. One teacher recently told us from Southern Oregon that she was thinking of quitting. In her own words, thinking about how to envision bringing theater into her science room actually was one of the greatest motivating factors to keep her in teaching. Another science teacher from Portland recently told us that she was planning on building a physical and gestural glossary of science terms with her classroom. And her students would go out in the world, and they'd observe scientific phenomena happening, and they'd use this new glossary to annotate the science underway. like physics in a sporting event. You know what happens when we ask teachers to use creativity and physical gestural enactment? It's the same thing that happens for students. They feel fear, embarrassment, uncertainty, and it turns into excitement, connection, confidence, and pride. They don't feel bored. They grow closer together, they smile, they laugh, they sweat, and it evaporates. And they stretch into new unexplored possibilities in their teaching. When we make original gesture to represent what we mean, we risk being misunderstood and probably, better yet, hopefully, feeling a little bit silly. But when we as adults show this vulnerability, the young people around us watch. Our relationships with them deepen. We're modeling creative risk-taking. There are things each of us can do. Embrace your love of metaphor. It's as powerful a human invention as the wheel. The next opportunity you have, engage with others, whether it's kicking off a morning meeting with colleagues, or it's having dinner with family, or greeting students in class. Insert a brief gestural routine, like your internal weather report. We must practice and exercise our muscles of metaphor, gesture, and willingness to be vulnerable. And on that note, return with me back to middle school. Remember the thrill and excitement and nervousness of creative engagement, and recall the new web of meaning that you embodied about evaporation. And now, think about how water can be in 3 different states: liquid, solid, vapor. And on the count of 3, make a gesture from wherever you are that represents the state of water you most feel like now. Let's send a ripple of creative engagement into this metaphor marketplace. 1, 2, 3.